Hello and welcome to the Cycle Starters podcast. I'm your host, Heather Rebecca Wilson, and today we're diving deep into the transformative world of ancestral healing and the Akashic Records with our special guest, Alee Reina Hoffman. Alee is an Akashic Records teacher and transformational guide with 18 years of professional experience. Her work helps people connect with powerful energetic forces that illuminate the most significant themes of their lives, helping them step fully into their role as the main character of their own story. In this episode, we'll explore how the Akashic Records can help heal family dynamics, break generational patterns, and create new cycles of healing within our lineages. Alee brings a wealth of personal experience as both a practitioner and caregiver, and she'll be sharing insights from her upcoming memoir, Dark Arts Catering, about family healing through the lens of the Akashic Records. So whether you're curious about ancestral healing, struggling with family dynamics, or interested in the transformative power of the Akashic Records, this conversation will offer valuable insights and practical wisdom for your own healing journey. So let's dive in and explore the intersection of family healing and spiritual wisdom with the amazing Alee Reina Hoffman. Hi, Alee.
Hi. Thanks, Heather. I loved that intro.
Oh,
I'm excited to be in this conversation.
me too.
Yeah, this is going to be great. And I feel like a great way to start the year because I think family traditions and like the relationship to our family, one way many people track that is their experience at the end of the year and the holidays and like what that felt like. So whether or not you're someone who's always around family or always thinking about your location with your family healing, I think this is a time of year where you just kind of got a pulse. You got to take a pulse on where you're at. So yeah, I love it. I love that we're talking today.
I'm so excited that you're here, and thank you for saying yes to being on the podcast. You're also the guest teacher inside of the
Yeah.
Ancestral Healing Collective monthly membership. This month, I will put the link to that workshop in the description below, and deeper into this conversation, we'll talk about that and give folks a preview of what to expect and what you'll be getting into. I think I want to first start off with sharing whatever you feel comfortable sharing about your ancestry.
Yeah, totally. So in terms of it's funny, actually, what I'm feeling to share first is the roots of my ancestry and then my family story. But on my mom's side, they are Russian Jewish people. So both my mom's parents, like their family came from Russia. And yeah, I'm just thinking of my grandmother's side, it was intense. They were born in my grandmother was born in tenements in New York City and was working by the time she was in elementary school.
Gosh.
There was definitely a lineage experience of men passing early, and the grandmothers, or on the Jewish side of the family, you call them your bubbies, the bubbies coming and living with their daughters and, being part of the caretaking of the children of their daughters. So that wasn't even what I was thinking I was going to start with. But yeah, that's the lineage of the matriarchal side of my family. And then my grandparents met in their early 20s. And my grandfather came from a little more privilege than my grandmother's side. So he kind of taught her how to ride a bike, how to go swimming, like all these things that she didn't get the opportunity when she was growing up in New York City, like working at 8 years old, and then he came back from the World War, they got married, they had children, and he had started a greeting card company called Sunset Cards in Harlem. So they actually were this Jewish family that were in at that time, more of a Black neighborhood in Harlem with their greeting card company. And that's a big part of that side of my family is greeting cards and just like celebration and gatherings and really sharing through cards. I had just, sold our family home and looked through just the amazing collection of cards that side of the family had, because that was something really important to that side. And then my grandfather actually passed away around 38. And my grandmother, had kind of had this Prince Charming experience of, having a really intense life and meeting her soulmate. And then he died quite early and she had 3 children and just went on that trajectory of being a single mother at a time where I think there's more support and acceptance of that now. But it was really hard when that happened in the late 50s. And my mom and her brothers weren't even, they were told not to bring the kids to the funeral. There was a
Mm.
lot of not really knowing how to acknowledge grief and really focusing more on keeping the family together, still having my grandmother's home be, they had been like the family center, my grandparents. And so there was a lot of emphasis still on keeping that as a place people wanted to be. And the reason I'm bringing up grief is that's a big part of my ancestral work. So I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
seeing that now, like this understanding of how to be with grief is a big part of like what I inherited to work with. So that was like my matriarchal side of the family. There was early loss. There was a lot of love and celebration, and there wasn't a lot of dealing with the grief. And then my dad's side of the family are actually, my grandfather was German and my grandmother was Sicilian. And the Sicilian part of the family, I feel like, is like the dominant energy on my dad's side.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandmother had 5 sisters, and her family started a welding company. They welded huge ships in New York City. And my dad ultimately worked in the family business. I feel like that's a whole ancestral thing we can talk about that probably we won't get into too much today. But family businesses, I think, are
Mm.
so interesting. And the patterns that go on inside of family businesses and the experiences and the issues that are inherited through family businesses, I think, are really interesting. But that was my dad's side of the family was Sicilian. And I think like Sicilians and Jews really can get together. There's a lot there culturally around family togetherness and intensity and passion and food and, all of that. And then my parents got together when they were teenagers. So my dad and my grandmother was a single mom, and my dad really spent a lot of time with my mom and her brothers. So he kind of grew up almost, inside of that Jewish experience as well. And they got married and they just, they were soulmates. They met very early in life and did a lot of interesting travel together. They were hippies and like traveled the world together and then settled on Long Island. And my grandmother, as is kind of the cultural part of the Jewish side of my family, like we had a family house with a mother-in-law apartment. And so my grandmother lived with us my whole life and was a big part of raising us. And my dad was a musician that also worked as a welder in the family business from his side of the family. So there was just like a lot of like family energy interwoven. And then the other big part I would say of the ancestral story is that when I was 14, I had a brother and we were extremely close. I would say he was like my soulmate in the world. And he and I were being raised on Long Island. And then my brother was diagnosed with cancer when I was 14 and he was 17. And we kind of went through that journey. And it seemed like, okay, this was sort of a weird fluke where my brother was sick for a year and we kind of all rallied together, and health and healing and spirituality wasn't necessarily like a big part of our family story. The bigger part of the family story was like family togetherness and music. My dad was a musician. My mom's brothers were musicians. Like everyone was super into music and family gatherings and being great storytellers and being very funny. And like, that was more of the element of our family. And so my brother got sick when we were teenagers, and it kind of just felt like, okay, that was a weird thing that happened. And then he went to college. And then he came home and we kind of thought that was going to be it. And he came home after his first year of school and he had relapsed and he had cancer again. And that was the turning of the tide where it's like, no, this is actually about to be a big part of our family story. And so he was sick for a year and actually almost passed. And it was at that time that we found out my dad had cancer as well. Suddenly our family story became a lot about confronting illness and working together, in that way, which was kind of a recall of my grandfather who had cancer when my mom was little and passed when my mom was 10 years old. And then the family story kind of continued where I went to college, and my dad passed away when I was 20 and my brother was 23. So there was this I kind of thought my family story was about one thing, and then it became about another, because from the time I was 14 to 20, my dad and brother both had cancer, and my brother was able to get well, and my dad's story concluded with him passing when we were 20. And it was just this deeply spiritual experience, and it was my initiation into kind of like the life I've had now of working with people around spirituality and transformation and healing. At the time, I was in school for music journalism because I was really connected to that part of my roots of growing up around all of these writers and artists and musicians. And then we had this transformative experience around my father's passing. And my brother and I both were like, okay, actually, this is our work. Like, we've been initiated into this being our work. And when you're a healer and when you're a healer for a long time, like, I think you just keep evolving. So where the story started was this big enthusiasm around healthcare and wanting people to understand healthcare differently and nutrition differently and prevention differently. And there was a way in which I think we both were like, we can protect ourselves and protect anyone else from the experience we had. And I think there was a part of us that thought we weren't able to save our dad because we just didn't know enough. And so we just went on the type of quest you go on when you're in your early 20s and you're just so hungry for knowledge. And the mainstream world at that time for us felt like a big disappointment. Like, mainstream education and mainstream medicine felt like a betrayal. And so we went on this deep mission to learn these other ways. And so my whole life story has been very interwoven with what was happening in my family. And as that evolved, what I focused on evolved. And then as I evolved as a healer and a seeker, a student, and a teacher, kind of the methods and the way I worked with people have evolved as well. So if the last 5 or 6 years hadn't happened, that would basically be the story. Although I went much deeper into the ancestral story than I normally would. But it felt like we could go there and
Oh, yeah,
and start
absolutely.
there. um and as I said, like, grief in our family had been more like less about dealing with trauma and more about being the uplifters and being inspirational and being nourishing to other people. So the first round of loss, even my father's loss, there was still this element of, we can't fall apart. We have to keep going, because that's the story we inherited. Also, when my grandfather died and left in the prime of his life with the family business that he had started and 3 young children, my grandmother was told, don't bring the kids to the funeral. My mom has told me how kids would bully them for their father dying. Like, it was just a very different time. And there used to be a lot of things in elementary school that were, you know, and some places maybe still do this, but like daddy daughter dance or these sort of things they would do where children who were missing a parent felt really called out
Yeah.
and isolated. And so I think we sort of inherited that. So when this loss happened, there wasn't a lot of looking at the grief or the trauma. There was a catapulting this into purpose and inspiration. Even like we'd have these things called Chuck Fests every year where all the musicians my dad worked with over the years, we'd have these huge events where they would play music, and we had memorials and college funds for other kids that were interested in music. Like, there was just this emphasis right away on inspiration rather than trauma, and which was inherited. And that's not all bad, but that's just part of the thing. And then there was an emphasis on this becoming right away, alchemizing this into a purpose of service rather than maybe working with the medicine a little more, like making sure you actually are having the medicine you're trying to give other people. There was this emphasis.
Right.
And I think for me, because this started so early in my life, there was an urgency that I was always living with of keeping up and making something of myself. So like right away by 22, I was working with clients, so that was kind of that. And then that would have been my story, is just like, that was my experience. And then about 13 or 14 years ago, the Akashic Records became part of the story and became the energy that I started to work with, that really became my mentor, my medicine in this lifetime, is that field of energy. And it's how I create, and also a big part of my family healing has happened with the Akashic Records, so we'll get into that. But yeah, that would have been my story. And then but what has continued since then is 5 years ago, well, it'll be 6 years in April, actually. In January, my grandmother, who had lived with us our whole life, passed away in January 2019. She actually died on the anniversary of her husband dying at 38. And my brother and I were there together, and it felt very karmic. It felt very like a completion of that cycle. And we were there all together as a family. And then very unexpectedly, my brother passed away in April. And there's like so much karma to that too. He was named after my grandfather, who died at 38. I found the birth certificates. They died at the same time. They both died at 10:15.
Wow.
And there was just like a deep story that we were aware of, that we thought with all the work we had done and all the healing we had done, that we had closed the loop on that. And I remember standing with him at this like beautiful memorial we had created for our grandmother. And we were just like, wow, that loop is closed, because we were very conscious of all the karmic work we were doing and why we were so drawn to do this work around healing and do this work around really processing what had not been processed in the generations before us. So for my brother to pass away also from a medical malpractice, it turns out he had a misdiagnosed heart condition from the cancer treatments from 20 years previously. And my brother had started this amazing functional medicine community. So my brother was working with thousands of doctors and practitioners, supporting them in their work. So for my brother to pass away in this way was so shocking for literally like thousands of people. Like he had been someone who, because of his family story, had created the career and the life of service he had. So it was incredibly shocking. And I know I already said shocking before, but it was like the ground went from beneath me, because first of all, that had really been my soulmate and my partner on the ancestral path. I don't have many people whose life I can compare mine to. I'm on a very Aquarian life path. But we were both actually Aquarius, and he was my fellow Aquarian on this karmic family path that we were creating together, and that we had a lot of fun with, even when it was intense. And so for him to pass shattered the story that we just hadn't known enough. It shattered the idea that when you go deeply into your personal growth and healing and spiritual practice, you can prevent things, because many people's story is that the worst things in their life happen before they come into their spiritual and ancestral healing path. Whereas I had hit these like peak success moments, and the worst thing in my life happened after these peak moments of my practice and of my ancestral healing journey. It was not about preventing, it was not about we inherited this thing, but now we fixed everything. It was like really about honoring my brother's journey and destiny, and honoring the real journey and destiny I'm on, and having to take some time to get really clear on, did I just follow my brother into this karmic path? Did I just feel this urgency because it turned out he wasn't going to live for a long time? Because, I had to really wrestle with like, what is actually my work? And there was a way that I was kind of running from the family, at the same time we did all this work. And I think many healers and practitioners, it's like the origin story is our family trauma and family experiences and family wisdom. And then we, especially in the American culture, it's like, okay, good. Like that's the origin story. Now go out in the world and give it to everyone else. Like be understood as a teacher and a leader by everyone else in the world. Be giving the medicine to everyone else in the world. And there's a way we can really try to not have to go back to the family story, like to let it just be that before story and not have to ever return to it once we've gotten our understanding and our medicine and our healing. And so when my brother died, I had to confront all of these things that turned out to not be over, or the way I'd put so much pressure on myself my entire life, because I'd not really confronted the grief, and the trauma, because that had gotten alchemized into purpose in my family inheritance so quickly. And I had to leave this cool, successful life that I had in Los Angeles, which is where I met Heather, and go back to my hometown and like where I had really been. And I think many people who lose a parent early or have some sort of trauma with their hometown, you try to get out of there and not go back. It doesn't have the same warm fuzzies it seems to have for other people. Like you'll see other people like they're so excited to go home and have all these cute traditions. And, that is so what my parents wanted for us and tried to instill. But there was just a lot of pain for me and a lot of unprocessed stuff around my family home, my hometown, my relationship with my mother, because the two of us were like, these nurses on the battlefield for a lot of my life. And we inherited our purpose and our way of doing this very differently. And so that had caused some conflict in our relationship. And so I thought I had done the family healing and ancestral work. And then I turned 35 and this happened. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm just getting started. It was humbling to realize how much of the story I had not yet worked. We'll talk about this today. Like when I was tuning in with the energy today, it's like, it's not everyone's work to have to be so immersed with their family of origin. It's not everyone's work. And we were saying before this, like for some people, their pain is how disassociated their family is or how, disinterested. Whereas my family was so into being a family. And the tragedy has been like everyone kept not being able to stay that long, but everyone really was into being a family. And sometimes I think not wanting to grieve was not wanting to admit the tragedy that there's families who get to live together for it seems like 100 years and don't even appreciate it or care about it. And in my family, there was such an emphasis on family togetherness and on building and creating family business and doing things as family. But being, my brother and I, we incarnated as siblings to have all the time possible together, to do the work we did together, And so that was like, whoa, I really haven't confronted certain things. And so I had to leave this cool life. I had to go where the work was really calling me, was back to my family. And so again, not for everyone, but for some of us, there's a spiritual calling where it's like, it could be trauma. It could be repeating patterns. A lot of people I work with when they're starting a family or working with fertility issues, they have to revisit certain things. But I just think for many people, there comes a point where you can't do any more until you go back to where you're from, which is the beauty of the work you do with this podcast and with your membership. It's like at a certain point, you got to go back. You can't pretend it's some random thing that your soul chose this culture or ethnicity or family tree. It's not, it's like, it's not random. We got to go back. And so the last 5-6 years has been me really back in the family field. Part of my spiritual work, the karmic work I needed to do is a thing that hadn't happened. There's a family story of a lot of stuff that happened in the medical system and men dying early in my family, but there had never been legal accountability, even when there could have been. And so I could feel really strongly that was my ancestral work to do on behalf of my grandparents, my brother, everyone who's been impacted by the healthcare system in this way. And I took on a lawsuit against the hospital and the doctor. And the Akashic Records was very integral in that process with me. And the process of that also allowed my mom and I to really have to unravel our family story, because a big part of the depositions was telling the story of our family. In the state of New York, it's unusual for an adult, for a mother and a sister to sue on behalf of an adult. That's more of a state where dependents, like a wife and children, would take the case. So we had to really tell our family story in a really big way. And it allowed my mom and I to have so much ancestral healing through that process and really close another chapter of the family work. And then this year we sold the family home that had my grandmother, my dad, my brother, everyone had lived in, and I had been running from my whole life, and I had to go learn to make peace with the family home and find the gifts that were there for me in that home, not just the, whatever other feelings that didn't feel like gifts. And we sold the family home, and kind of that was the next part of the process. And then I also wrote a memoir about this time, which was confronting because this was the worst time of my life. And I couldn't believe that that's what the book was supposed to be about. But that was the truth. It can be very confronting to be called on to do ancestral work. You can feel very victimized by it. And I was like, what? Now even the book? I've had such a cool life. Now the book's about this horrible time. This work chooses you, like many shamanic practices and healing journeys and what, everyone's different path. Like many paths choose you. And I think ancestral healing work chooses you. So that's the transmission on that.
Wow. I mean, thank you. You said so much, and there's so many directions we could go in. But the first thing I want to say is that I'm so sorry for your loss
Thank
and
you.
your losses.
Yeah.
And, just thank you for sharing all of that. Like every piece of that story, there's so much wisdom um, in what you shared. And the family businesses, ancestral healing through family businesses, like let's put a pin in that because
Put a pen.
no one has talked about that in
Oh,
my membership or on this podcast. And I would love to go down that rabbit hole with you at some point. I think that is super interesting and going to be really healing for people.
I would love to. I was in a long-term relationship with someone in a family business and grew up in the family business. And yeah, it's so rich. It's so rich for
Yeah.
healing.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
please, like,
Yeah.
let's totally explore that
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
near future. Okay, so where do we start? I think you spoke about during the time of your father's passing, when your father transitioned, that was your initiation into the healing work that you
Yeah.
have been doing, right? And the Akashic Records work. And so I think I want to start there in terms of explaining what the Akashic Records are, right? Because I know that there are going to be some listeners who
Sure.
are curious about ancestral healing and they know a little bit about it, but they may know nothing about the Akashic Records. So can you
Sure.
explain what they are?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the Akashic Records is a field of energy. It's also referred to as the Book of Life in some ancient texts. Edgar Casey was called the Sleeping Prophet. I'm just naming a few things people may have heard of before that they feel he was reading the Akashic Records. The way I like to think of it is it's like the spiritual internet, or if the universe had a supercomputer and everything has a file. So this is a vibrational, energetic, meditative process, but it's also an energy that starts communicating with you in many ways in your environment and through writing, through art, through movement. But really, it's like the energy itself is like a supercomputer. We have a file, like our connection has a file. Your family story has a file. Venice, California has a file, right? Anything we can conceive of that's vibrational matter in our reality and in our consciousness has a file. And there's guides and guardians that are kind of like the managers of this supercomputer and are sort of supporting the process you're having with this field of energy. And then there's an access code to open the computer, and that's the Akashic prayer. And there's different schools of thought on the Akashic prayer. The school of thought that I come from is that, you have a teacher that attunes you to the Akashic Records and you work with their Akashic prayer. And the Akashic prayer, each word has a vibration that's opening the field of energy to you so that you can receive from this field, receive from this computer. And for many people, you may find that as you continue to work with your own personal Akashic record, you have a prayer waiting for you to work with. And so some people may work with the prayer they were given by whoever they were first attuned by or learned from. And some people find that, they actually have a prayer they have themselves have inside of their records. Pretty quickly for me, I mean, I just had my very good friend was my Akashic teacher, except we just laughed because my dad came in like immediately and I had this whole process in the Akashic Records with my dad. So I never actually got to learn her style, but she was my kind of attunement, my energetic attunement, a good friend of mine to the Akashic energy. And then pretty quickly, it was like the prayer came in and the way I'm here to work with the Akashic came in, and that was it. So this is a field of energy that you have this Akashic prayer. It opens the energy and then you begin to translate what's in the file. And something I think is very important to understand about Akashic Records energy in this field is that it's a mentorship. The way actually all of these tools are, right? Like tarot, when you really work with tarot as a mentorship. Astrology, I know that's one of your great tools. Like, I don't know if you think of it as a mentorship, but I think there's these tools of measurement and communication with the energy and with the universe and with our own soul journey that are a mentorship, because it's not about taking what you want. It's like, if you're really going to go in and really be able to work with these tools, you have to receive what's there. You can't take, you're going to receive. And what you receive is not always your preference,
Mm,
right? And
yeah.
what you receive is not always what you think should be the next step. But something I've learned from this many years, and now, the cool thing is, I did have these tools when the worst things in my life happened. My story no longer is the worst things of my life happen, and then I got these tools, and then everything's been great. My story now is, I've had a hard initiation, I got these tools, things were great, and then the worst thing of my life happened, and I had these tools. So I've gotten to really experience these tools with thousands of people in session, but also they've gotten to work with me in like every possible location that my life has had so far. And so, it's like about what's actually relevant. So you're not going to receive everything that has ever happened to your soul, everything that's ever happened in Venice, California, or in your house, or everything you could possibly write a book about. You're going to receive the most relevant energy and the most relevant message for this moment. And it's a step-by-step process. So that's the experience. It can feel, as I said, like in a reading or in a session, like a meditative healing, psychic reading type of thing. But there's many ways to work with the energy. So you can open the records of a forest
Mm,
and be in energy in that way. You can open the records of a type of energy healing. You can open the records of a book, a talk, a project. I opened the records of the lawsuit,
mm.
and like really, and when I was in my deposition, I opened the records when I came in, and it's in the book. I mean,
That is so
it's a
cool.
whole thing, but it's like there's many ways. And so I also do a lot of writing and poetry and graphic design with the Akashic Records, where I open the records of a client, they show me specific images, and I work with the graphic design, to create that. And I have many clients who are artists and dancers, and they work with the energy through many, many modes of expression, not just a meditative healing reading, but that, of course, is like a very wonderful way to work with the energy.
Oh, thank you for explaining the Akashic Records, not only to our audience, our viewers and listeners, but also to me too, because I loved the reading that you gave me. It was very healing.
Good.
Yeah, it really brought me a lot of peace, actually, our session together. So I wanted to make sure I said that. And thank
Good.
you for that. Well, okay, so you're leading this amazing workshop called Family Healing with the Akashic Records inside of my membership. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the membership, it's called the Ancestral Healing Collective, and it is a sacred space that I created in 2023 for female-bodied cycle breakers and cycle starters, right? This is the Cycle Starters podcast, who want to alchemize deep ancestral wounds into spiritual gifts, embodied joy, shifts to higher consciousness, and creative potential with the help of pleasure and astrology as transformative medicine. So we have a new moon pleasure practice and dance party every month. And then I also have a guest teacher come in and lead a live group experience. And so I'm really excited to have Alee be our guest expert this month. This workshop is happening on January 30th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on Zoom. The workshop is included in the membership, but if you're not in the membership, you can join us for $30. That's the energy exchange. And of course, I'll put the link to the membership and the sign up for the workshop. I'll put that in the description. But Alee, I want you to give folks a preview of this workshop. What can people expect And, I would ask like what your inspiration is around the topic, but
Yeah.
you really spoke a lot about that. But yeah, what would you tell people who are like, oh no, I think I might want to do this?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just need to say again how cool I think it is. Like what you've woven together, the tools you've woven together and making this a place where people can, as I said, just like really relax into honoring. Like there's a reason we chose our family and our cultures, and it's a part of the evolution of our soul. And we can go in there and receive and heal, and also that it's the cycle starters I love, because the name of my company is Soul Innovator, and it's just, so I guess that kind of leads into it. It's funny because we're in this Aquarian age. As we discussed, I'm very Aquarius. This has been a very Aquarian company for a long time, and it's like innovating, and why I called my company Soul Innovators, probably close to why you're the cycle starters. It's like we're here to introduce new and positive change to an already existing environment. And like the way we heal and transform and have a life we enjoy is by recognizing the things that have been hard or painful or challenging, the things we've inherited, the things we were born into. We already are in a time in the world where we know a lot of stuff is not working. So it's not
Yes.
you necessarily. It's like we are here to show what no longer works. We are here to be the mirror for what needs to crumble. And like more and more people are stepping into that role in the world. I mean, it's a very exciting time on the planet, even though it's very destabilizing. And
Yes.
so yeah, I mean, I think it's really like a place that people can have a lot of confusion and shame around their relationship to family. I forgot who says it. I don't know if it was Ram Dass. It's like if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family, like that
Hmm.
story. There's an intuitive knowing and a clearly researched knowing of like, we need to look at what we've inherited. That's how we're going to change the world. We need to look at inherited trauma. We need to understand the culture, the wide variety of cultures that have been muted or erased and are trying to fit into a box that's not what their roots are. Like they're being asked to grow in something that's not the roots that they actually come from. So, I mean, like we're all learning, we all understand that, I think, collectively, but then there's this way it gets really painful to do that inside of our own family system where it's the place we don't feel seen for many people. It's the place
Right.
we regress. It's the place where it's like, how can the rest of the world see who I am and the people I come from can't acknowledge or appreciate, and vice versa, right? And so I just feel like this is a very innovative time in the world where we moved into Pluto and Aquarius. And the paradox of that is I'm getting so much messaging from the Akashic field that, is my mentor, of like, this is a year about really returning to the earth, really returning to what's natural, really allowing like nature to take its course, really understanding how we are from the earth and like our lineages come from, like just how natural it is to be where we're from, and to stop having conflict about that, stop having conflict about where we come from. And oftentimes we can't receive the gifts because we don't just inherit trauma, we inherit great gifts and great wisdom. I
Yes.
mean,
Yes.
and I work with people on their soul lineage too. And like the soul lineage is the lineage that goes beyond your personal heritage or your personality's family, but like there's still a reason your soul lineage, because your lineage, that's your soul throughout lifetimes. But there's a reason you chose this family and this heritage, and there's a reason
Right.
these people chose you. And so it's like, really, it's time to do the work of understanding that if we're truly going to innovate, if we're truly going to have this Aquarian renaissance where we bring in all this new community oriented thing. Like our first community is our family. We've got to
Uh,
understand it. We've got to understand our family.
Amen.
Um, it's like, yeah,
Preach.
like, well, I just feel, and my experience, it was really shocking for me. It's all good now. And there's a term called secondary loss, which is all the losses that happen outside of your like primary loss. And, I had when my dad died, that was hard, and I lost some people, or not everyone was considerate, but I was also 20 years old. I was like not deep into the game. It was very shocking to me the amount of people who, especially if you knew my brother and I, it just could not handle the enormity of it
Right.
and the pain of it. And it was frightening. How could someone healthy and wise who other people turn to for wisdom around their health and healing have this happen? Like there was just a lot of reasons and just a lot of, I inherited it too. Like people turn away from grief. People don't know how to be with grief. And so there was a lot of secondary loss for me of people that I knew from the healing spaces, people who are renowned in their field for being really wise about healing, and people I know who had invested thousands of dollars and hours into doing all this work to be expanded and enlightened and to be in a good place about ancestral stuff. And they literally disappeared when this
Mm.
happened because it was like, this isn't a workshop. This isn't, I don't want to say medicine, because I have a lot of respect for medicine circles and workshops and all of these things. But when it comes to real family shit, a lot of people who are doing healing work have totally disassociated from that. And you're really missing out. If you're someone who does healing work and goes to every workshop and every retreat and is in every program, but you've not really gone home and dealt with your family shit, and you don't know how to be there for other people who are doing battle on the field of family, you're missing out on a big part. And if you're having a hard time with life and you're like, but I do all this healing work, where are you at with family stuff? How have you been able to be alongside the people in your life when they're working through family stuff? And what do you still have to work through? And it's not to shame anyone, but it's just like you're missing so much of the medicine you're on this like quest to try to receive if this is the place you turn from.
Oh my gosh, so much wisdom you just shared, and I really relate to what you're saying, because, I've shared this with you before, but I did have to go back home a week before COVID started in 2020 because my dad was going through a serious medical
Yeah.
issue. He almost died from just crazy colitis and had to have an
Mm.
ileostomy bag. And,
Wow.
so I was back home in the DC area for 8 months. And if I had not done my healing work, and if I didn't have tools before that, like seriously, I would have ended up dead or in jail because of the conflict that, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
went through the ringer
Yeah.
with my family. Um, and I wouldn't be where I'm at today without having gone through that. Like being able to survive that and still be in loving connection with
Yeah.
most people in my family, honestly, it's not everybody,
Yeah.
was a huge victory for
Yeah.
me, So it was a gift and a blessing. It was really, really hard to come home and be in the thick of it
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
but it was a gift, and my dad and I definitely got closer, and he's doing much better, thank goodness. But they're in their early 80s. I mean, getting to mid 80s at this point. So
Yeah.
I need to go back and see them soon. I saw them at my wedding in March. That was good. And that was also a family healing experience.
Right.
And also a traumatic experience too, in a way.
You know what, though? I think you're speaking to an important point with because we so rarely, we're almost told going back home is a failure.
Right.
Once you leave, you're supposed to be totally individuated in
Right.
the culture
Never
we're
come back.
in. You're supposed to never need to come back. And so because there's such a fear of ever having to return and do some work or be of service, so many people want to be of service. It certainly felt cooler at different times to have my service be out in the world, getting, all these accolades of what a genius I am in this specific way, not about everything. But it's like, yeah, the work was to be at home and to really deal with some feelings and be in my hometown. And like, it's an ego death for many of us to have to return. But if we never
Right.
return, then everyone only gets together for weddings or Christmas. And then it's insane because there's a lot of medicine to be exchanged and nobody's getting the opportunity to exchange it until it's these high pressure, high intensity situations that trigger all sorts of stuff in the field of the family.
100%. Yes. Weddings,
Yeah.
funerals, births, all of the unresolved family content comes up. And my wedding was definitely an example of that. So, okay, we could talk forever. So, this workshop.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Sorry, I'm
what
going to
would
let you
you,
go, but
no, it's okay. So, for folks who want to participate, what
yeah.
would you tell them in terms of how to best prepare to
Yeah.
get the
So
most out of it?
totally. So, okay. So there's the first segment of people who may have identified themselves in what we've already discussed, which is like, yes, I've had to do a lot with my family. There's always some family drama, or there's been pain or illness or loss in my family where, like, I know it's probably still impacting me, or there's a way I haven't known how to, we've got those people who are coming. And I just want to add in one more piece. There may be people where they're no longer here. The people they have beef with, or the people they feel they have something to resolve, are no longer here. Or you may be from a family where it is truly unsafe, right? So I'm
Right.
not saying, hey, if you're enlightened, go see your family. If you came from deep physical or sexual or emotional abuse, or deep, you know, if something is dangerous, I just want to like make that clear. This is why the Akashic Records is so profound, because we're going to have a group experience of going into the energy with the Akasha and going into the deeper story beneath the family story. And so this is really supportive if you're in a really well-worn groove with your family of origin, where it's either like you're very involved, you feel victimized by how involved you are, or you come from a family where it is truly unsafe to participate in person with each other, or you come from family where it's like, the person I really have a lot to say, the person I really need to work with on this. In my case, that was my attunement to the Akashic Records, was like, we go to have this experience where I'm going to learn the Akashic Records and my dad's there. We're going to do this. You've held so much for me and for the family. We're going to do this work in my Akashic Record. And it ended up being like an 8-hour experience. So that's why my friend and I didn't get to
Well,
do anything. But yeah, like right away, it allows you to get underneath the triggering surface layer stuff and go deeper into the energy of your family and why you're in this family and what's the deeper story of being in this family and the occurrences that have happened. And I think it also can give you a lot more compassion for the people who have hurt you in your family when you can look at it all. That's been a lot of my work with people, is like really understanding what these people that have been triggering for them inherited, what they were working with on a soul level. So this is a experience, whether you can relate to my story or Heather's story, or whether you can't relate to being in such close proximity to the family story or participating in the family. We're going to go into the energetics together, and everyone's going to have a journey where they really connect to their heritage through the Akashic translation of that. So through the energetic translation, and really we're going to work with what's most relevant for you right now in your life. And I just think, to speak again of the Aquarian age, so even though we're in this technological AI, here comes the orbs and the aliens time, this is a time about the earth and about family and about really understanding our roots and really understanding our purpose in humanity. Because if we're grounded in that, then we can work with technology and with other life forms that may be coming to share with us from a really grounded, heart-centered place. But we have to be in touch with our roots. And so I just think, I haven't always wanted my medicine to be about family healing. I've tried, I have my own story of how much of my life it felt like it's taken up, but it's my medicine. It's many of our medicine and our work. And so I think in this Aquarian time, anyone who's excited about this Aquarian age and being a cycle starter and being a soul innovator, this is a great time to just connect with the roots and see what's there. And my sense is like, there's a lot of gifts we've been refusing
mm,
because of what we think we'll have to exchange, what we think the cost will be. And my experience, when I finally slowed down and stopped running and stopped comparing myself to other people's families that had completely different family story than mine, was just to like go there and be there and find rightness with where I was from. And then there were so many gifts that have been waiting for me spiritually, physically, emotionally, that I didn't have to, like there wasn't a cost. It was just what was. It was just what was true to be there and to receive. And so I think there's also a lot to understand about how to stay connected to yourself while being you don't have to lose yourself to receive from your family. So I think that's going to be part of it too. But it'll really depend on the group that comes together. Like there's always a reason why a specific group of people come together for a circle with the records. And so there'll be themes that'll start to come through once we have the group.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
This is going to be amazing. And you've just said so many powerful things. And I love the way you're reframing doing this family work, this family healing, changing it from something that you're being victimized by into something that is supporting you and helping you in terms of your soul growth. So, yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. I love everything that you're about. And, this workshop's going to be amazing. I do want to change topics slightly because this is the Ancestral Healing Collective monthly membership, right? We use astrology as transformative medicine on our ancestral healing journeys. And so you've been talking about the Aquarian age, right? We're moving into this age of Aquarius. Would you mind sharing with us, if you feel comfortable, your sun, moon, and rising signs?
Totally. Aquarius sun, Aquarius rising, and Cancer moon.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. All right. So, yeah, you are definitely an Aquarian. Like, this is where you shine. And then also, your rising sign is like the vehicle for your divine mission, right? Your purpose. And so, you are sharing your medicine, living out your purpose as this rebel, as this genius, as this person who's doing something very, very different than, what's going on in the mainstream, right? As like a Akashic Records channel, a soul channel. Like you are you, which is so beautiful and awesome. I would love to hear how you care for your emotional life as a Cancer moon, because folks may not know that all of the water signs are very psychic and intuitive. That would be Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. Cancer is also about the family and the mother too.
Yeah,
Isn't that wild? So as somebody who, and let me know if this resonates, but like you feel everything. As a Cancer, I mean, how do you take care of yourself with this Cancer moon?
totally. Well, and I think that's what's so fascinating is we can really look at the astrology and see when this is a soul calling to do work
Yeah, totally.
with. Because what I've realized too is like being an Aquarian is not is basically often being on the non-traditional innovative path, which maybe looks like being into robotics, but in my case it's like in this moment it's been non-traditional to be into the things I'm into and go back to do this level of work with my family, like family of origin. Like many people who are an Aquarian age, like are trying not to do that. So I was like, that's actually been part of, I think, how I'm an Aquarius is doing this work. And then the Cancer moon, and actually I have Chiron in the 4th house in Taurus.
Okay. Okay.
So, which is also like, it's about home, it's about family.
Yes.
It's like, that's where my deepest healing is family wounds. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, the way I really do that is like, I really need time alone, because I feel everything so deeply and I feel so much with my family so deeply and my clients. So I really need some time alone to process and like putter around. And then I really need movement too. So like my emotional health is I have my practice in the morning of like meditation, journaling. So I think many Cancer moons, like we've got to write, we're feeling so much. And it's like, you've got to translate some of what you're feeling. So I have like my stream of consciousness writing that I do, and then my regular writing. And then I need a lot of movement, like a lot of yoga, hot yoga, strength training, walking, time in where water can move. So a lot of sweating and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
baths. But I need not just to like be immersed in water. It's almost like I need to create the water. Hot, hot sweating activities feel really important for the Cancer moon. Does that make sense for
Yeah. Yeah.
sweating?
That totally does. Cancer is actually ruled by the moon. So would you say that you are very much influenced by the lunar cycles. How do the lunar cycles show up in your life?
Well, I feel like it's interesting because now we're all so much more aware of
Mhm.
too, so I definitely do feel these completion cycles with the full moon, and I really love new moon energy too.
Mhm.
I love being in the
Me too.
void. I think when you're someone who feels a lot, it's nice to have that energy of space,
Yeah.
I feel like I really enjoy the spacious periods and like the waning. I think I was born on a waxing moon, but it's
Mhm.
like, I really like that period of time in the month too, when it's not extreme, when we're just coming into balance. There's something very balancing, I feel like, about like the weeks in between the new
Mhm.
and the full moon. I hadn't really been thinking of it. I like that question. But yeah, that's what I would say. That's my favorite time of the month is when everything is in process and there's a little more space.
That makes sense. I mean, I think being a Cancer moon, the moon is the ruling planet of Cancer. I can imagine that the full moon is like kind of intense,
Yeah.
right? It's like, like the energy's a little wonky. So, yeah,
And
I think that
everyone's
makes
energy is a little
everything.
wonky. I'm like, get me into that part of the month where everyone's not, about to lose their minds.
Well, so you and I could talk forever.
I know.
I'm so fascinated with everything that you're doing. I'm so excited for this workshop. Again, it's happening January 30th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I'll put the link in the description. Alee, if people want to learn more about you, if they want to work with you, where should they
Yeah,
go to find out more?
sure. Well, I'm on Instagram. My Instagram name is Alee Reina, so ALEEREINA, or AleeReinaHoffman.com. But yeah, I share a lot. I'm just adding Instagram because I share a lot on there. I do love letters from the Akasha and different video transmissions. So that's a nice way to be connected if people do social media. And then I work with people in groups, and I do a lot of deep dive working with the Akashic Records. I customized programs and experiences for people with images, with content, with very specific training and work we're going to do together with the energy.
I love it. So
Yeah,
cool. Well,
thank you.
yeah, of course. Oh my gosh. So, this is the Cycle Starters podcast, as you know. And so, I end every interview with this question: what new cycles are you starting in your lineages?
Wow. I'm like, what's one I haven't thought about? I think like a new cycle I'm starting in my lineage is being a matriarch. I really feel, I'm not in a relationship right now. And that's just been part of being a cycle starter. Many people in my family were in their relationship very early and then lost their partner early, and then have been kind of on the leading edge of being a matriarch, but often, doing the thing and doing it on behalf of men who have had to transition to the other side. I feel like something I'm doing differently is I kind of did that on the front end. I did lose kind of my ally and partner in terms of my brother, but it's like I really have spent a lot of time really deeply getting time to understand truly who I am spiritually, physically, emotionally, mentally, creatively, and I'm really, really clear on like what I'm bringing into being a matriarch. And so I feel like I'm getting the opportunity to like be this really nourishing matriarchal feminine being who had a lot of time to like journey on her own before bringing the wisdom into a family of my own. But it feels like that's where I'm headed next. And that will be something very different for my family.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And
Thank you for
thank
asking.
you. Oh my gosh. Thank you for being here and being in this conversation. It just feels so good to spend time with you and to be in your
Well,
energy. You're so chill and funny and wise and,
thank you.
just like very, very connected to the unseen realms. I feel that very, very deeply. So I'm just so honored that you're going to be teaching in the
Yeah.
membership. And yeah, just thank you for being here.
Thank you. And I just really, really want to say again, like, I just thank you for creating spaces where this can be understood as valuable. There is something very healing having just finished the book and realizing, yeah, this is really what I can teach. This is what I can really share right now. It's not about how to have it all or, being in the hottest time of your life sex. Like there's been other times of my life that were maybe more sexy or fun, but this is a really rich, valuable, powerful time. And you asking me to do this made me realize this can be valued and understood as valuable in the greater world. And you're just offering so many people such a gift to find rightness in the soul journey of being someone who's really in service to the family story. I feel like many people feel underappreciated when that's been their soul journey. And it's actually so important and so special to be that person in the family. And I just feel like you're giving a platform to something that's not really been as lauded in the healing and personal growth world. So I just really see you and celebrate the way you're doing that while bringing in the astrology and the self-pleasure and the pleasuring practices and really teaching people you can have the ancestral healing without losing yourself. There's so much you're doing to make sure people have a relationship to themselves and to the ancestral work. And that's one of the big pieces, I think, that are challenging is how to have that. So I just really want to reflect how special what you're doing is.
Sis, thank you.
Yeah.
I received that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Yeah.
that reflection. I appreciate that so much.
Yeah.
All right. Well, to be continued. Obviously,
Yeah.
we're going to talk more.
Yeah.
And if you want to attend Alee's workshop happening on the 30th, definitely just go to heatherrebeccawilson.com. All of the information is there. If you want to join the membership, the information is there too. So, Alee, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody, we will see you on the next episode of the Cycle Starters podcast. Take care, everybody.